In the Father and Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So consumerism is something that is huge today, right? So we find in this picture that humanity is evolving into getting into just being people that consume things. And it's true, that's how we are, right? So I want something that is blue, then I want something that is yellow, something that is red, right? We want something after the other, after the other, after the other. But we never ask ourselves, why do we want so many things? We don't need them, but we want them. And when we have them, we're never satisfied with them, right? We are never satisfied with them. So I can watch, well, I don't, but I could watch Netflix for hours, right? You would think after 2 hours, you know, okay, you're satisfied, you can move on with your life. But because what you watch, what you consume is so empty, you're actually not filled. Something is always missing, something is wrong. And that, like a light bulb needs to come out here, and we need to try to address this issue. So Pope Carolus says what? Says the soul without prayer is desolate, barren, dry, and close to frustration, failure and destruction. Without it, the soul fades and its freshness is demolished and its beauty perishes. If prayer cools off, sloth comes, laziness overwhelms, strength faints, spiritual heat is lost, activity disappears, the desire for heavenly things perishes, good intentions fade away, the heart yields to evil desires, and every holy emotion vanishes away, joy is lost, and peace flees. So in other words, what he's saying is that prayer is what makes you complete, makes you full. And when we don't have that, the soul is so empty. It's not how it's supposed to be. And because we are lacking this prayer, then we try to consume anything else, whether they're videos, whether it's music, whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be, right? Because we are missing this thing. But again, he comes and he compliments. He says, prayer fills the soul with warm spiritual desires. Prayer is the power of the soul and food for the spirit. Prayer is the life of the spirit. When I pray properly, I do not need anything. And anybody that has experienced a liturgy, actually lived a liturgy, so there's a difference between me like doing an empty ritual on Sunday morning, going to liturgy and just being there, right? But I'm not there with my heart, with my mind and soul, right? And then I can go out of liturgy very empty, the same way as if I came in. But anybody that truly prayed the liturgy from his heart, you go back home and you sit down, you're like, You don't need anything. You don't have a desire to do anything. Like, I just want to sit down and relax. I just want to be with God. I want to continue this liturgy, that strength I took away from it. I want to continue my relationship with God right here and now. Maybe I can grab my Bible. But I don't even feel the need to do it because I'm full. And that's what prayer does, right? It fills us with God. When I'm filled with God, I do not need anything else. But the big question that many people ask is, why do we need to pray? Doesn't God already know what I want to ask Him? Right? I think you guys are a bit grown up for that kind of question, but just in case. But this question is so misguided. Because this question assumes that prayer is me standing in front of God and asking Him stuff, and then He has to respond to me as if He's Santa Claus, or as if He's like this machine, right, that I put money in, and I get my bag of chips or a bag of chocolate, as if God is a vending machine. That's how we deal with Him sometimes. But that's not what prayer is. God knows what we want, and He knows the deep desires of our heart. We don't pray to ask God stuff. We can ask Him stuff at the end of our prayer, but that's not the objective of prayer, far from it. The objective of prayer is much deeper than that. St. Peter says, by which have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of the divine nature. Right? What does he mean by that? St. Paul says, but we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord. I want you to think about these words. So, I'm looking in the mirror. Who am I supposed to see in the mirror? Yeah, I'm supposed to see God, but theoretically, like talking as a human in this earthly world, when I look in the mirror, who do I see? I see myself. right? But Paul says, yeah, you see yourself, but you need to see someone else too. You need to see God. He says, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord. So what is he saying? He's saying, when I look in the mirror, I see myself, and you must see myself that is broken. I'm broken. But that self needs to be transformed from glory to glory until I get to the point that I see Christ in the mirror. Remember yesterday I was saying that when God will judge us, he looks inside of me and says, does he see himself or not? Does he see his image or not? That's what this means. That's why St. Peter, just before, he was saying that he wants us to partake of the divine nature, to become in Christ, to become a small g God. In that sense where I become like him. I become a small Christ in the world. I become the light of the world. And this is true Christianity, by the way. And that's what Orthodoxy teaches. That's why we have the communion, the confession. That's why we have long prayers, tasbihas, and so on. Our prayer is not 5 minutes. Because 5 minutes will not get us to that level. You understand the difference? And we're not necessarily doing this because, if I pray 2 hours a day, I will go to heaven. If I don't pray 2 hours a day, I will not go to heaven. That's not the point. The point of Orthodoxy is to live heaven on earth. To be filled by God, to enjoy heaven as if while I'm on earth. And continue this joy with him in heaven. So it starts here. That's the difference. So our mindset is not about, just me, I want to be with God in heaven. I really want to escape hell. It doesn't make any sense if I tell myself I want to escape hell, right, for eternity, but I'm actually living hell on earth here. And there are people like that, right? So I can go to church and actually live hell on earth. I know a person actually, she came to me in confession, she's about 40 years old. That was maybe about a year ago. And she told me, Abuna, I'm angry and I'm impatient and this and that and her kids and stuff, and she's going nuts. Honestly, I don't know why I told her this, but I was very blunt that day with her. I told her, do you want me to be frank with you? She said yes. I told her, you're currently living hell on earth. And I'm really afraid for you. I don't want you to continue in this way. So I told her what to do, right? And I told her about the spiritual canon, which I'll speak to you about in a few minutes. And she left. She came back 2 months later in confession. Completely different person. You can actually see it in her face. And she told me, Abuna, I've never felt peace like this in my entire life. And she's 40. But she's baptized Orthodox. But she's never truly lived Orthodoxy. She never truly lived a life of prayer. She just does things, empty routines. They're not full of Christ. But this stuff is real. But how do we engage with it is the story, right? Again, Pope Carlos says what? By prayer you negotiate and communicate with God and enjoy his company. And he will be present, listening to you. If you associate with people of virtue and communicate with people of wisdom, you will gain much of their traits and virtues. How much do you benefit by communicating with God? Who will approach the fire without feeling something of its heat? By prayer, your mind will be enlightened. Yesterday I was talking about how when we don't pray or when we sin, our mind is darkened. And sin has authority over us. That's very true. And the opposite is also very true, right? So my mind is enlightened when I meet God. Your heart healed and your conscience purified. By prayer, your heart will be filled by holy and sublime desires and be elevated above human nature. The human nature here is the corrupt nature. I'll be elevated above this. I'll be like Adam and Eve, how they were prior to sin. And that's what a saint is. And that's what we're called to be, right? By prayer, you will be raised above earthly things, and all your desires will be turned into spiritual ones. I won't care much about stuff. My needs are different. For example, I'll tell you, I know people at my church, your age. They have a meeting with their friends. They're going to meet their friends, right? It's Sunday evening, but they haven't fulfilled the spiritual canon. They actually stay in church, and the spiritual canon is about 45 minutes. and they pray the spiritual canon, and they go meet their friends late. Right? We don't want to be late for work, but we do not mind being late for prayer, for liturgy. He's completely the opposite, and he's not alone. Right? It's very different. My desires are different. I'm transformed. Why? Because I've tasted something that is so good, and honestly, it's addictive. So it gets addictive, but in a good sense, right? And everything else becomes meaningless. It's as if, when you eat food all your life, right? So we eat food all the time. So I'm eating food all my life, and I think food is great, food is awesome, right? And then one day, this person comes and introduces, a triple cheese, quadruple bacon, sausage, pepperoni, pizza, if that's not too much, right? And then you taste it and you're like, wow, what is this, right? Does anybody in his sound mind go back to full, right? No. But that's what sin is versus God. Obviously, sin is full, right? But if my stomach is hungry and I have never tasted that pizza, all I do is go back to the full because I know nothing better. But again, like Pope Carlos was saying earlier, I become so empty still. And I still desire so many things that are very earthly. So Pope Carlos obviously is a man of prayer, and we've seen this a lot, right? We heard about this a lot. I want to just give you an idea of when he was saying earlier about being elevated above human nature. This man, because we have a doctor, right? A doctor, he currently lives in the UK. When Pope Carlos was sick, I'm sure you met him, I forgot his name, Dr. Michel something. Dr. Michel Garas, something like that. Anyways, when he lives in the UK, but you know him, yeah? He's a very nice man. So he actually attended to Pope Carolus, his medical needs in his last year before Pope Carolus passed away. And he has a book and he says a bunch of his stories that he himself saw. And he says stuff like, Pope Carolus would take no appointments with anybody. He had a time in the day where he would meet people. But there's no schedule, there's no appointments, he doesn't know who's coming, who's not coming, right? But then, while he's sitting with Pope Carolus would tell him stuff like, please go call Mark. Mark is outside, go call him. And the man has no idea Mark is there. And nobody has an appointment with Pope Carolus. And the doctor will go out, he's a doctor, right? He says, Mark! He just screams for Mark, he doesn't know who Mark is. He's like, I'm here. And then Mark will come in. He's like, go call John. And he would go. That he had such an amazing spiritual vision, right? You know this, right? Because he was a man elevated above nature, right? He saw things like Omena Irini was the same way, right? These people that were elevated to that level of sainthood because they truly lived orthodoxy, right? He has another story where he says, again, it was him, he was saying it, that Pope Carolus used to take a medication because he had blood clots, right? Or there was a risk for him to have blood clots. So for thinning, right? And what happened is one day Pope Carolus said, no, I'm not taking the medication. And the doctor was insisting, and Pope Carolus was insisting, I'm not taking the medication. So the doctor said, fine, and he went and he told Pope Carolus, I'm going to ask the pathologist to come see if you're okay. So the pathologist came, did what he had to do, and he told the doctor, actually, it's a good thing he didn't take the medication. Because his blood was already thin enough, right? It could have caused issues. And then he remembered that Pope Carolus told him, if I take it today, right, it will bring more harm than good. He saw crazy stuff, right? But how did he get there? And does that mean that we need to get there? We hope to get there. Will it happen? Practically, probably not at that level, right? We're not going to get there because this man was truly a man of deep prayer. He lived monasticism in his bedroom prior to becoming a monk. I think he wrote this letter prior to him becoming a monk. So he already lived as a saint before even entering the monastery, right? So what's the purpose of prayer? And why is it important? And why does it have to be every day? And why does it have to be twice a day plus my Bible and so on? Because prayer transforms me. Literally, transforms me. It's like this phone. My phone needs to be recharged, right? If I don't charge my phone every day, my phone dies. But as an Orthodox Christian, my purpose is to have 100% battery at all times, as much as I possibly can. And that requires me replugging into God all the time. And when I'm away from God, when I'm not engaged with God, right? When I'm not in communion with Him, what happens? My battery drains because sin happens. And sin separates me from Him. And therefore, my inner life becomes weaker and weaker. And then I replug again. And since God is the source of peace and joy and love and you name it, right? That's why when we plug often to Him, we become transformed again, looking in this mirror and seeing the glory of God. We become full and we find this joy, this peace. Like this woman I was telling you about earlier, right? Because that's what God does. That's who He is. That's the essence of His being. He's the source of all these good things. And I need to plug to Him and plug to Him enough to be able to taste this. And when I taste this, I understand what Christianity is all about. But until then, it is difficult. I'm asked to do things that I haven't tasted yet, and I'm hoping, crossing my fingers for results. And results come after a bit. But in the meantime, I have to continually struggle to be able to get there, right? So I want to talk to you now, I'm going to go into the practical portion, about 4 stumbling blocks that come between us and prayer. The first one is time. Apparently we don't have time. But we all know we have 24 hours in a day. It's actually not about time at all. It's about priorities. I was talking to you earlier about this man that went to see his friends late to be able to pray. Right? So we're very lucky. In our church, we have very nice youth that are even discipling, even high school youth. We have grade 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 kids, right? They're in tasbihah every week. And I'm sure this is in different churches as well, right? Because you have people that are living that are discipling them, right? People commit, they have time. If I say I don't have time, then I need to ask myself, what do I do on vacation? Let's say I take a week to Cuba. Do we pray more in Cuba, or do we pray less when we go to Cuba? For most people, is we pray less. Definitely less. Although we have all the time in the world. So why do I pray less? Because my mind is set on things below. My mind is set on, I want to eat and drink, I want to relax my body, I want to go on the beach. So if my mind is set on these things, then I do these things, right? But if my mind is set on things above, then I do on what is above. You feel me? So it's never about time. It's about priorities. I know people, again, I'm sure you know people, and some of you here, I'm sure do this. You wake up earlier to pray. People pray before studying, before going out, you name it. It doesn't matter because it's a priority. Because I know if I don't plug myself in God, I suffer. And that's how it is. We truly suffer. Because suffering starts when I separate myself from God. Because God does not want us to suffer. Definitely not. Right? But to be able to pray, it needs to be in an organized fashion. And I'll tell you, the same way that we eat 3 times a day in our bodies, we need to at least eat 3 times a day in our spirit. If you want to really have a good relationship with God, it means at least 3 times. It could be twice prayer, so morning prayer and evening prayer. And it could be also the Bible. It's another spiritual meal that I'll not discuss today, right? But definitely, we need these 3 spiritual meals, right? And when we eat them, we find ourselves fulfilled. But we need to go to our Father confession to be able to get a spiritual canon from Him. The second stumbling block comes from the fact that we can do everything whenever we want, right? So I want to search something, I Google it. We want to watch something on YouTube, I watch it, right? I can do shopping at 3 a.m. I can watch 4 hours straight of wherever I want. So this idea of instant gratification, right? And what this leads to is that I always have what I want when I need it, right? But then I'm asked to fulfill a spiritual canon. And then let's say I come and it's 7 p.m. and I want to pray. Not I want to pray. I need to pray, but I do not want to pray. I don't feel like praying. So that becomes very difficult. Why? Because I'm usually Usually I do whatever I want to do when it comes to these things, at least at the evening time, right? I'm in control of my schedule, and usually I do whatever I feel like doing, especially if you don't have kids yet, especially if you're not married yet. When you have kids, it's very different. You realize how life truly is when you can't go to the bathroom when you want to go to the bathroom, right? Because your kid, is screaming, having a tantrum, or is hungry, whatever it is, right? You start learning what true life is. True life is not about what I feel like doing. Life is about what I need to do. And that, you probably know, through work. When I go to work, often we do not want to go to work. But because we must, because there's an immediate consequence. If I don't go, then I go. That's how it is, right? And often, for those who are still studying, right? Probably not many of you. When we studied, when we had exams, we don't feel like it, but we were forced into it because there's a consequence to it. But prayer is also like that. There's an immediate consequence where I do not engage with God as much as I would like if I don't pray. And long term, it definitely has a catastrophic consequence. Not only that I'm not going to make it to heaven, but because, again, I'm being stripped away from God bit by bit. But that's what real life is like. We don't do what we feel like all the time. We must do what needs to be done. And we need to eat spiritually. We need to stand in front of God regardless of whether we feel like it or not. Look what St. Macarius says. St. Macarius the Great, right? He says, "But the beginning of every good endeavor and the guiding force of right actions is in perseverance of prayer." So the beginning of every good thing is in perseverance of prayer. For the person who daily forces himself to persevere in prayer is inflamed with divine passion and fiery desire from a spiritual love toward God. And he receives the grace of the sanctifying perfection of the Spirit. And saying, this is deep. Who is this? St. Macarius the Great, right? So this man is equivalent to St. Anthony the Great, right? So, St. Macarius, are you telling me that you had to persevere in prayer? Are you telling me that prayer for you was difficult sometimes? What do you think his answer is? It's like, yes. I did not always feel like praying. It's very difficult. Sometimes I was bored, right? Sometimes I was lazy. Sometimes I was being fought with these weird thoughts. But I had to persevere in prayer. That's what spiritual life is like, perseverance, right? So first stumbling block is time factor. That's not true. It's not a matter of time. It's a matter of priorities. The second point is not what I feel like doing. It's I need to persevere in doing what I need to do. And I definitely need to connect with God. The third point comes honestly from Buramat al-Miskin. He said something that is so true. So he used that verse that says, "And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength." This is the first commandment. He took that verse and he says, he switched it or swapped it for prayer. So what he says is, "And you shall pray to the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength." The third stumbling block is the lack of focus in prayer. Often, prayer ends up being an empty routine. Check mark, I have to do. Okay, let me describe the Agbeya. I just say stuff, right? But I don't feel it. Again, it's not filled with God. He says, no, that's not how prayer is. True prayer, and when we connect, we plug it into God, has to be with my entire mind, heart, soul, and strength. So my entire being is going into prayer. That's why I always tell people, when you go pray, if you have the luxury to choose your time of prayer, choose it. Especially in the evening. I always encourage people to pray early in the evening, not before you go to bed. Because I go to bed because I'm tired. Is that the time for prayer when I'm tired? How in the world will I be focused? Focus is the key to prayer. If I'm not focused, I'm not going to be able to pray. And that's why it's important what I do on Saturday night before liturgy. Right? And it's important to sleep early Saturday night because that prepares me for liturgy. Liturgy, there's a lot of preparation for liturgy. There's a lot of preparation for confession, like you name it. You need to be spiritually prepared to get there. Right? But if I pray, let's say 6, 7 p.m., I still have energy in me. And I grab my agbeya, and I go in my room, right? And I tell myself, usually when I tell people that confess to me, is that I don't care if you do 12 Psalms, 2 Psalms, 6 Psalms, I don't care about this stuff. What I care about is that you do pray with the agbeya, because agbeya is important, right? But I want you to spend half an hour with God in prayer. If you do 6 Psalms or 12, couldn't care less. But I want you to enjoy the Psalms. Some people like to pray very slowly. Fine, enjoy it, man. Enjoy God, right? Some people like to pray fast. That's fine. It's up to you. Enjoy God however you pray. I personally like to pray slowly. But when I'm tired, I pray fast. Because when I'm tired and I pray slow, I can't focus. I'm just not there. Like the words are not connecting and I'm not there. So I switch to praying fast. Because my objective is focusing, because that's what connects me to God. You understand? And we're all different. And we all have different moods. And that's fine. So we need to do whatever we gotta do to plug into God. But it has to happen with that focus. So a true prayer, which happens like a true prayer, what I mean is that, let's say to 100%, a level of 100%, is actually rare. Because a true prayer would mean that I would get out of prayer and I'm actually like kind of sweating. I'm tired. Like recently, I think 2-3 weeks ago, I prayed the unction of the sick for a kid. It's a very sad story. So it's the story of this couple that had many babies, and like one after the other, they end up like dying because of a certain sickness. And now they have their third baby, right? I'm like, and the baby also has the same, symptoms and potentially might die. So I told myself, you know what, I'm going to do at least what I can do. I'm going to go and pray the unction of prayer. So obviously when you pray for things like that, man, you pray. Like you pray. Like it took me at least an hour and a half to pray the unction of the sick. I'm not joking. So I finished, I got into the car, I went home, okay? Honestly, I could not move. Like honestly, I told my wife, please, like, do me breakfast. I was on the couch, I could not move. I was about to die. I was exhausted. It's exhausting. Obviously, I don't always pray like that. I don't think I'm a saint. I had a specific reason why I had to pray so hard, but I came out of it so tired. That's what true prayer is. It's not, okay, it's time for prayer, let me put, my phone on the side. Okay, in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, I gotta work. Our Father, who art in heaven. That's not prayer. We're never gonna taste God that way, right? It's much deeper than that. So Macarius the Great, again, he says, we ought to pray neither according to any bodily habit, nor with a habit of loud noise, nor out of a custom of silence or on bended knees, but we ought to soberly to have an attentive mind, waiting expectantly on God until He comes and visits the soul by means of all of its openings and its paths and senses. And so we should be silent when we ought, and to pray with a cry, just as long as the mind is concentrated on God. So what is he saying? In other words, he's saying your external habits don't matter. Sitting, standing up, right? Whether you're praying out loud or not, doesn't matter. Fast or slow, doesn't matter. What matters? That my mind is focused on God, right? Why do we stand up and pray? Because standing up makes me energetic. So definitely, we should stand up and pray. But let's say someone is extremely tired or has leg issues or back issues. And if he stands up in prayer, when he stands in prayer, while he's in pain, so he can't focus, I would tell him, sit down. Sit down, alleviate the pain, and focus. When you can't stand up, stand again, and sit down again. Manage what you need to do to be able to pray. So we said the first one is time, and that is not true. It's a matter of priorities. The second one is not about what I want to do, but what I need to do. The third one is about me persevering in prayer, right? The third, this is the fourth one. The fourth one is about emotional spirituality. You know what that is? You know what emotional spirituality is like? Anybody? So today we often run after spiritual songs, right? So when I spoke about agbeya earlier, Many people don't like Agbeya. And whoever doesn't like Agbeya because he's not praying the Agbeya. By the way, I hate these two words when put together, I can't stand them. And the words are, I am reading my Agbeya. We do not read the Agbeya. If you read the Agbeya, you will hate the Agbeya. We pray the Agbeya. There's a huge difference. Praying the Agbeya means that I'm taking these words given by the Spirit of God, right? And I'm taking these words and I'm making them mine. And they're going from my heart. That's praying the Agbeya, right? But often people don't like Agbeya and they switch to Tarawih, to spiritual songs, right? Because these things are very emotionally charged, right? In the sense where they have, sentiments and emotions, right? And then we connect with these things because now we're emotional beings. And we do not want anybody to hurt our feelings and all these things, right? But if I'm feeling something emotionally in prayer, does that mean that I've truly prayed? That's a good question. Because the emotions is something that is related to the spirit or to the soul? To the soul. Right? When we pray with our spirit. For example, if I don't know what that movie is, right? So I'm not advocating this movie, right? Okay, but so I'll just put any poster. So let's say if I go watch a movie, like I remember a long time ago, you guys saw Gone in 60 Seconds or something like that, like, Nicolas Cage was stealing cars and stuff like that, right? So I remember actually when I was young, I went to see that movie. You got out of the movie, like you feel like stealing a car, like that's how you feel like this is great. I was like, obviously I didn't, okay, but this is how you feel like. So if I go watch, is this recorded? Yeah, okay. So if you go watch a movie, and the movie is funny, and the movie is emotional, and I cry in the movie, and I laugh in the movie, and all these things, and I get out of that movie, am I spiritually fulfilled somehow? Absolutely not. It could be a secular movie, right? But emotionally, I have a lot of emotions, right? But spiritually, I have nothing. I'm empty, right? Look at this guy, right? So let's imagine this. I used to go to the gym again a long time ago. So imagine I'm going to the gym or I have a soccer game or a basketball game, whatever it is, and people listen to music to pump them up, right? So I'm pumped up, right? So now I'm going to the gym. I look like this guy. I'm a bit better than this guy, but almost there, right? So I look at this guy, I go to the gym and I'm pumping myself up, right? And I'm like there, like the music is really pumping myself up. And I'm there and usually I lift 20 kilos, right? I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I'm so pumped up today. I'm so lifting 50. Will that happen? Absolutely not. It's not gonna happen, right? I'm never gonna lift those 50s. I'm actually gonna get hurt, right? Emotional spirituality leads to nothing. It leads to like a very intense, immediate desire, but long term it does absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Right? A true spiritual life is someone, that would think differently. That would say, well, now I look like this, but you know what? I'm going to continue lifting my 20s. I'm going to have a trainer. I'm going to develop muscles, but I'm talking about spiritual muscles. 2 months from now, I'll be lifting 22s, right? And then another 3 months, I'll be lifting 25s, right? Then it becomes this long journey of transformation. And that's why it's not about emotions. It never is. Sometimes God can transform you in a prayer where you don't even feel anything in that prayer. You don't feel anything. Actually, you feel, you're so tired. You go in, maybe it's like 1 a.m. You go in and you tell yourself, I haven't had time to pray, this evening, but I'm still going to do what I can. And you stand in front of God and you're so exhausted. You just grab your Agbeya, or you say, no Agbeya even, and you try to give just 10 minutes to God. And obviously you can't feel much. You're very exhausted. And God will take these 10 minutes and transform you more than the half an hour you did yesterday. Why? Because by standing in front of God in that way, you have sacrificed yourself. You have shown true love. Right? So it's like a mother that comes home after a long day of work, right? And she doesn't feel like cooking. And she could tell you, you know what, just go grab McDonald's. I don't care what you eat. But she doesn't say that. And she goes in the kitchen, right? And she cooks and prepares the food and brings it out to you. Because she loves, right? Love is sacrificial, right? When she's in the kitchen, she's not all smiling and happy and joyful and jumping around, I'm so happy I'm cooking. It's not how it is, right? She's tired. But that's what love is. Similar to God is when I spend time with God when I'm tired in prayer. So God, I'm so sorry I couldn't today. There were certain circumstances that led to this and I couldn't give you more time, but here I am. I'm giving you 10 minutes. Just accept this sacrifice from me. God says, Amen. Right? And transforms me in that prayer. So the fourth one is not about emotions. I'm almost done. One thing I want you to understand in prayer, I was talking about Agbeya earlier, and about spiritual songs and so on. Every prayer is a prayer. But not every prayer is equivalent to the other. What do I mean? So I'm not saying if I pray a spiritual song that God doesn't count this as a prayer. That's not what I'm saying at all. It can still be prayer, definitely. I'm not saying if I'm praying without the Agbeya that it's not a prayer. Of course it's a prayer. But there's different kinds, different types, different levels of prayers. And it's like this. I have a plate, I have rice, I have meat, I have vegetables, maybe I have a fruit later, right? And when I eat all these things, how am I doing? I'm doing good, I'm healthy, right? In prayers like this too. But there's certain prayers that are absolutely mandatory. There are my meat and vegetables. That is liturgy and Agbeya. Because Agbeya is the word of God. We need to get better into engaging with Agbeya. It's the word of God. When I pray it, I'm using God's words to pray. It lifts me up at a different level. It's a mystery actually. It transforms you in ways that we don't understand. But what happens is this, is when I eat any food, right? If I eat chips, you guys, this is very important. If I eat chips or I eat broccoli, and let's say I don't like broccoli, I eat two types of food, right? Now, I ate both of them, but will the chips give me the same energy or nutrients as the broccoli? No. Different types of foods, right, fill me differently, do different things inside of me. That's how it is spiritually as well. The liturgy is my meat. But we go there like, oh man, it's boring. Oh, actually it's not boring at all. It depends on the state of my heart. And that is very true. Whoever went, let's say to Texas or to any monastery or convent, right? If you actually spend a week there and you spend it properly, because that's what I see when I go with high school kids, like grade 9 to 11, right? I go with them to the monastery. The first day or two, it's like a detox, right? Because we take away their phones and so on. So they have a detox from the world. And still things are boring, things are heavy. Starting the second day in the evening until the 5th, 6th, 7th day, they're in heaven. And they're like, wow, liturgy is great. Why don't I pray liturgy like this at church? It's actually very simple as an answer. It's because it's the state of your heart. It's the same liturgy, same abuna, right? Same everything. But the state of my heart wasn't ready. But it's my meat. Agbeya, it's my vegetable. Once I eat my meat and my vegetable, it's fine if I say spiritual songs. It's obviously very good if I actually speak to God with my own words. It's definitely encouraged. There's nothing wrong with that. Definitely, go ahead. And I don't, to be honest, I don't necessarily, if someone doesn't like the structure of Agbeya, I'm like, fine, Habibi, just break it up. Again, just live your life, but use it. I don't care if you eat, all your meat, then you move to your rice. It doesn't matter. You can have a couple of bites of meat, go to your rice, go back to the meat, and that's fine. So I can be in prayer and enjoying the Psalms, then say, my own words to God in prayer, go back to the Psalms again, and that's fine. What's wrong with that? If the structure of the Agbeya is heavy for you, okay, break down the structure. Do what you gotta do to be able to live it, to enjoy it, right? But the fact of the matter is this: once the food is inside of me, that's what matters. what it does here. Because that's what makes me grow. That's what transforms me spiritually. Although when I eat the broccoli, it doesn't taste good, but it transforms me. So a person might not like the agbeya. It might not taste good. It doesn't feel good when I pray it. Doesn't matter. Do it. Because it will actually transform. I think this is the last slide. Yes, last slide. So the one last thing I'll tell you is, again, imagine someone that never eats. What happens to him or her? It's a matter of time before they're in the hospital, right? They can't move, they don't have energy. Now they wanna revive themselves. So what do? Because of their lack of eating, now their spiritual stomach is like this, very small, right? I can eat a bite and I'm full. That's fine, but eat the bite. Sometimes it's fine to start with 5 minutes. If I haven't prayed in years, obviously you're not gonna pray half an hour. It's not gonna happen. Take the 5 minutes in the morning, take the 5 minutes at night, but do it and be consistent about it. So what happens when you do this is that your stomach, although it's small, it gets filled. And then it increases its size, right? And then when this happens, although you're on the bed like this in the hospital, you have now energy to actually sit down. And then your stomach enlarges, you eat a bit more because you're consistent in your eating, right? And then you're standing up. Next thing you're walking. Next thing you're jogging, right? And as your stomach is increasing in size and you're eating more and more. And that's how it works. Well, we can't lie to ourselves and say, well, I'm a Christian. And I'm sorry for saying this, maybe it's a bit harsh, but I don't see how it works for someone to say I'm a Christian and doesn't pray. I don't know what that means. I really don't. Because to say I'm a Christian means that I'm proclaiming that God is my Father. That means I'm His son or daughter. That means that there's definitely an intimate relationship. Right? So if I'm not praying, I don't know, it just doesn't work. You see what I'm saying? Right? We definitely need to get there. I spoke mainly about prayer today. But obviously I take nothing away from the Bible. I definitely take nothing away from the Eucharist. The Eucharist is the beginning of our union with God. And that union continues in prayer. I want to tell you a secret. You want to tell you a spiritual secret? You know why people that take communion every Sunday, they're taking communion, yet their life is the same after 10 years? We see often people like that. Every Sunday they're taking communion, but their life is the same, it doesn't change. It doesn't mean that communion is not communion. No, communion is communion. It's the true body and blood of Christ. But why is my life not changing? That's a good question. And the answer is because there's no prayer. Because communion is the beginning of my union with God. And this union continues through prayer. And when it continues through prayer, then it leads to a life of transformation. But what happens is, people take communion, right? So they partake of the Eucharist, they're one with God on Sunday morning. Sunday evening, they're doing whatever. Monday, they've already disconnected again. They went to work, they backstab this. I'm exaggerating, right? But we do so many sins, right? And that sin leads to disconnection from God. And then I find myself Monday evening, Tuesday, I'm just the same I was on Saturday night. And that's not what communion is. God will not tell me, okay, Abuna Gabriel, you're so good. This year, you had communion 50 times. Great. The passing grade was 40 times. You got 50, you get an A-, come to heaven. That's not how it is at all. It's about being in communion with Him or not. That's what it is. If I am in communion with Him, then I have His image inside of me. If I am in communion with Him, that His peace, His love, His joy are inside of me. It doesn't mean that sometimes I don't feel tired or upset. Doesn't mean any of the stuff. Yeah, we all sin, right? But just looking at the overall picture, that's how it is. If I want to avoid sin, to be able to be in communion with God. Because sin does what? Separates me from God. The last thing I'll say about sin, why did God choose these specific commandments? It's the last thing I'll say, but I think it's a very important question to ask. So, I mean, how did God choose His commandments? Why is adultery a sin? Why is lying a sin? Does God want to piss us off? I really want to bother them, or I want to make it hard on them. Let me put this list of sins. They won't get this one, right? Is that how God goes about it? Why these specific commandments? Why these are sins and those are not? Any guesses? Yes. Take me away from prayer. Yes, you're on the right path. It's a bit deeper than that. Yes.
I think since He made us, He knows how we function best. So He knows what kind of things that will be the most will give us the most successful, happy, fulfilled life, and what will take us away from that. So the things that He said don't do are kind of I recommend not doing these things because they're not going to be the optimal performance for your soul and body and that.
That is spot on, but I want it in different words. But you're spot on.
It leads to destruction.
It leads to destruction, yes, definitely. Yes, that's all true. But the specific words I'm looking for, yes.
I believe that he knows already what are the worst things in the world, and I think He's protecting us from those things.
Very true as well. 100%, but it's not the words I'm looking for. Yes.
Because He is a jealous God and He wants to be involved in everything. So if He's not involved in it, then He's can't do it.
But is God really jealous? Is God jealous in the literal sense?
No.
Of course not.
You to prioritize Him and have Him with you.
Very good. So in the Old Testament, when God says that He's jealous in the Old Testament, doesn't mean He's actually jealous, right? He's talking to the people in the language they understand, just to make sure, because I don't want anybody else to think God is like that. Because I know that people, some Protestants actually say that God is jealous literally, and that led people to become atheists, because obviously it's nonsense, right? God is definitely not jealous. But He speaks in the way humans understand. That's a good point, but again, not what I'm looking for. Anybody else?
I was just going to say that these are the things that take us away from Him, or
Very good.
our relationship with Him.
Very good. That's spot on as well. Yes.
You're tainting His image, so how can
Thank you, huh?
Yeah, so you're tainting His image, so how can you be one with Him if
Very good.
He knows how His image is, so He's these are my credentials. If you want to be like me, follow these
Very
credentials.
good. So God says, I am the source of love, joy, peace. He is. That's actually who He is, right? And says, I want this stuff in you to be joyful, to be peaceful, to be loving, caring, and so on. Now, for you to have this, you need to connect with me. So, in other words, you need to be like me, live like me. So, since I am the truth, you shouldn't lie. You understand? Since I love and I don't lust, you shouldn't lust. You get it? You follow? Since I love to such a degree of love that I love my enemies, and God definitely does, and He showed it on the cross, right? And even us who could be considered His enemies in the sense where we reject Him, but He doesn't perceive us like that, right? He still came and saved us, right? It says, I love my enemies, so I want you to love your enemy. I want you to reconcile, to forgive. I want you to be in my image. You're in my image means you're mine. Means I see myself in you. Means you'll be happy. Obviously not in the same way God is happy. God is not happy, right? In that sense. But we find the source of life in Him, in every sense of the word. And that's why, when you say, okay, well, lying is not a big deal. Actually, lying is a huge deal, because what lying does is that it disconnects you from God. And that's why we say all sins are the same. Because all sins have ultimately the same issue, disconnection from God. But the sins are not all the same when it comes to the consequences of the sin. Where if I kill someone, I'm going to prison for a lifetime. But if I lie. Consequence-wise, they're different. But disconnected from God, they're not different. I just sinned. You understand? And that's why we go back and repent and confess and take communion. We go back into God, right? We plug into Him. And glory be to God forever. Amen.